to First Things First. I'm Jenna Wolfe. That's the Hall of Famer, Cris Carter. That's my best friend, Nick Wright. How's everybody? Thank you. Nice to see you, Nick.
I would say Cris and I are a tag team duo, but it's more of a triple threat situation here.
Triple threat.
There we go.
It is.
Good Monday morning,
Nick?
everybody.
I mean, what, CC? What?
No, you guys are so funny. Some of our most entertaining stuff is off the air, but we want to stay on air.
Yeah.
So we better keep the off-air stuff
let's
off
get
air.
this moving.
Yep.
Anyway, you guys had a good weekend. You were down in Florida, taking in the sun that we didn't have.
Great weekend.
Good.
You didn't have to say I was in Florida because somebody might have thought I was somewhere else.
Sorry. Florida is code for anything. All right, so why don't we start the show? Now that I know. Sunday night football, Seahawks, Eagles, and yet more Seahawks.
Parole officer thought I was here in New York State.
Seattle handing Philly a piece of paper with an L on it, Nick. Russell Wilson added fuel to the MVP discussion, throwing for 227 yards and 3 touchdowns. Man, he looked good. Carson Wentz threw for nearly 350 yards, but turned the ball over twice. Philly drops to 10-2. Seattle improves to 8-4. And here's Russell Wilson.
It's December, it's time to play, it's time to be great, and that's what we need to do, and that's what we need to continue to focus on.
I thought Russell was phenomenal tonight. I thought that was Russell showing you everything that he's all about. From start to finish, from the first play of the game on, he was on it.
We turned the ball over, they didn't, and on a road game like this, in this atmosphere against a great team like they are, it's tough to win when you do that.
All right, we're going to get to Russell Wilson in a bit, but let's start with the Eagles. CC, you still believe they are the NFC's best team after what happened last night?
Well, I think that it's not fair for the Eagles if we try to judge them different than we've judged the other teams. If you talk about the most consistent, the Philadelphia Eagles have been right there. You're talking about offense and defensive dominance. They've been right there as far as one of the top teams. I didn't see anything last night that would change my opinion. Because if we look at the season and you say, in week number 13, Philadelphia, regardless of what our expectations with Philadelphia were, they're going to go to Seattle and play a Sunday night game. You think, oh, they're going to lose that game. Oh, there's a great possibility of that, how good Seattle's been. But the reason that we look at it a little bit different is because Seattle hadn't been great at home. Seattle has a bunch of injuries. With their offensive line, how would that go against Philadelphia? One of their strengths, their defensive line. So it didn't play out that way. Right. Seattle played a phenomenal game. They went at this game as if they're a team that's been in the playoffs the last 5 or 6 years. Like they have the experience. They need it to say, is there a must-win situation? Seattle had to win this game. And they got off to the great start, got the crowd support behind them, got the early lead. Philadelphia couldn't track them down at the end. But very impressed with what Seattle did. My expectation for Philadelphia had not changed. It's either them, New Orleans, and potentially the Rams. But the Vikings, they can get the number 1 seed. So who do I think is better? I still think Philadelphia might be a little bit better than the Vikings because of their quarterback, who to me last night didn't disappoint at all. He just went against a guy in Russell Wilson who was phenomenal. I mean, off the charts. Jenna, one of the first things that you wanted to learn from us when we started this show was like, when you guys say when the offense is off schedule, Jenna, last night's game, that video is inside of the football almanac trying to explain
what off schedule is.
Yeah, when the offense is off schedule and you need it. Russell Wilson and what he did last night, he neutralized that rush. Yeah. Very exciting for Seattle. My expectations for Philadelphia have not disappointed, but their game in Los Angeles is even bigger now because they're on the West Coast for this 2-game road trip. They have to get a split.
All right, you said a lot there that I want to respond
it's
to.
our show.
No, I know. No, it wasn't a criticism. It's just there's a lot there to digest. First, to answer the question, like, is the Eagles still one of the NFC's best? Sure. Are they the NFC's best? Well, I hadn't had them there yet this season. And I think what you're going to see now is more of the country coming to exactly where I've been, which is there are 6 teams in the league that have distinguished themselves among the others. 2 in the AFC, the Pats and the Steelers, and 4 in the NFC. The Saints, the Rams, the Vikings, and the Eagles. And you could rank those 1 through 6 almost any order that you would like. I going into this game, had the Eagles closer to 6 than to 1. Coming out of this game, I have the Eagles closer to 6 than to 1. But I'm not going to really, pound the table and argue if you have the Eagles as the second best team or the fifth best team. Those 6 teams are the best. I thought the Panthers were one of those teams. This week, they went to New Orleans with a chance to prove that. They didn't prove that. Like, I think those 6 teams have distinguished themselves. But the thing that you said that I totally agree with is what you said about Russell Wilson. But the thing that you said that I can't quite figure out is what you said about Carson Wentz. That Carson Wentz was great yesterday. Carson Wentz, if we are going to evaluate you as the league's leading MVP candidate, that wasn't a great game. A 2-turnover game. One of those turnovers took 7 points off the board. Another turnover.
Did I actually say Carson was great, or did I say he was good? Did I say he was great?
I thought you said he was great. Maybe I wrote it down, so that's what I think that's what you said. But I wouldn't even. Let's say you said good. I wouldn't even say. I don't know how you can say Carson Wentz was good last night. He had some really good moments. He had some amazing Carson Wentz moments where it feels like he and the quarterback across from him yesterday are about the only 2 quarterbacks that can do that type of stuff. Like, he's going to get sacked. Cam can almost get sacked and get out of it. What Carson and Russell can do is almost get sacked and then throw the ball 40 yards downfield. He had some unbelievable moments yesterday.
So what was he bad at yesterday?
Well, he had a game-changing fumble. That's a bad play. When they were trying to come back, he threw the ball.
Yeah, but when you analyze the play, he's running to the end zone, all right? He gets hit and fumbled. It wasn't like he was careless with the football. That's part of getting hit. That's part of being in a contact sport. I believe that play changed the direction of the game, but to me, I don't look at that as being a super negative play with a quarterback that runs with the football an awful lot.
Well, I think you have to be, because of the silly rule the NFL has, which is that's a turnover. That's the fumble out of the end zone. Instead of if you fumble it out of bounds, you keep the ball. If you fumble out of the back of the end zone, instead of the team's on the 20, it's the most damaging play you can make near the goal line. I think you have to be extra careful with the football. That's first of all. Second of all, his team scored 10 points. Like, this is one of
the... Yeah, they did have 450 yards, though, right?
They did.
Oh,
and
okay.
But, Cece, you've been telling me... I believe you've been telling me, I know Coach Mangini has been saying that the yard stat, when we were talking about the Patriots, don't worry about the yards, worry about the points. The point stat is the one that we focus on. And when you come into the game as the highest scoring offense in the league and you score 10 points in a critical...
That's not the first good offense to go to Seattle and score 10 points.
Yeah, but Cece, we went into the game talking about if that Seattle defense is what we thought it was going to be without
But we watched the game. Their defense played great.
Absolutely.
So, that's what we're analyzing it on. Regardless of what we thought was going to happen, you have to analyze what happened in the game. Seattle's team came to play. They looked like a veteran team that was playing with, we must win this game. That's the way I look at it. That's the way the NFL seasons happen. Sometimes when a team has more emphasis on winning because they must win, you go on the road. Seattle, still one of the toughest places to win. So that, to me, I'm analyzing Philadelphia just like I do any other team. New England, if they had a slip. Minnesota, if they had a slip. These teams have been the most consistent teams, and they warrant being at the top of the NFL.
Well, and I agree with you there. They've been among the most consistent in the league.
If we are going to talk about Russell Wilson being in contention for the MVP, does this team play as well as they do without Russell playing like he does every single game?
It's impossible.
Right? So is it a dangerous situation for them to be in where they have to rely on him to be able to do that week in and week out?
He made at least 10 plays, totally off schedule. I'm free runners in the backfield, defensive end, defensive tackles, and forget the yardage. The negative plays that he kept them out of by being able to get rid of the football, that's not a number that you can calculate. And it's hard to play that way every week. And that's why I don't believe Seattle can have a long playoff run, because they're too inconsistent. You're not worried about their playmakers. They were playing zero coverage, man-to-man, no guy in the middle of the field against Philadelphia a lot last night. Against Seattle last night, this Philadelphia defense. So Jimmy Graham has been a huge highlight for them. It's 9 touchdown passes from Russell Wilson, but they really haven't had a consistent threat. So it's hard to keep that up.
Yeah.
CC, so as far as what it says on the screen, should he be in the MVP conversation? His raw stats would say no, but as far as the V in valuable, it's an overwhelming yes. He's going to set the NFL record for highest percentage of yards he accounts for. He accounts for 82% of his team's total yards, and he's accounted for 29 of their 30 touchdowns, which is insanity. I want to ask you this question, because I think this is one we agree on. I'm not sitting here saying Russell Wilson's the best quarterback in the NFL. I believe that to be Tom Brady or Aaron Rodgers when he's healthy. Drew Brees is up there. I do believe, though, there is not a single quarterback in the NFL better suited for what Seattle has than Russell Wilson because of what shambles their offensive line is in, because they can't get a running attack anywhere else. I don't think there's another quarterback in the league that could have the Seahawks in the position Russell Wilson does.
Well, one thing that I know for certain, a lot of the reason why Russell holds the ball is not only the offensive line, is because of his height. Okay, he can't see. Okay, so he's got to hold the ball and allow things to develop a little more than the other guys. Aaron Rodgers can play in any system. I don't care if they couldn't block him or not. Aaron Rodgers will be able to avoid him and still be able to get the ball down the field. Now, Russell is unique in his overall ability because he does scramble, but he's scrambling to throw the ball. He has the best run-pass combination. I'd much rather have Russell than Cam, because he is a better football player, he's more accurate, and he's more consistent. And he's more elusive than Cam.
Oh, listen, he's better at that than anyone in the league. What he did last night, the off-schedule stuff, and turning it into super positive plays, he's the best in the league.
With more now, we welcome in the man my mom literally describes as the coach who knows so much about football.
I love your mom.
Good to see you, Coach. How are you?
How are you, Coach?
Great.
Good
great.
weekend?
Yeah, it was a fantastic weekend.
Good.
Yeah, kids were good, a lot of basketball.
I'm glad we got to the bottom of that. All right, let's talk some Patriots.
Thanks for asking.
Yeah, of course, anytime. Patriots took care of the Buffalo Bills yesterday to improve to 10-2, their 8th straight win, but it wasn't a drama-free win. Cameras caught Tom Brady yelling at offensive coordinator Josh McDaniels early in the game. Guys, drama classes are on Saturday. Brady went 21 for 30 with an interception. Here's Tom now on the incident afterwards.
It's just football. Yeah, we've been around each other a lot, so I love Josh.
Coach, what was your reaction to the little scuffle, if you will, on the sidelines?
There was no reaction. And what Tom says is exactly right. It's just football, and it happens so rarely with him that it becomes that big of a deal. And it happens so rarely in New England that it becomes a huge issue. But these guys have been together, what, 13, 14 years, and now we're in week 12 of the season. It's a problem with coaches. When a player comes off the field, we want to give information right away. And sometimes you need to give a guy a second or two to breathe, go to the bench, sit down, gather the thoughts. But we're just programmed to give that feedback right now. And that Josh, I think, probably will take a step back next time, let him breathe, and then give him the data.
But you just said it. You said you rarely see it from him. In past years, in this season, it's just something that's so out of character for Tom Brady. I think that's why we're talking about it this morning, because you so rarely see it. So was it more than it was if we don't often see it?
No, with Tom's personality, he probably gets frustrated like that once a season, maybe twice a season. He got through it, and now we'll move on. And we'll go another, 14, 15 games before it happens again.
Listen, I want to make this clear. I love the fiery players. I love what Brady did. I didn't have a problem when he did it here, and I had a problem when they caught him a few years ago, him and Bill O'Brien going face-to-face. It was kind of Bill O'Brien's original, where people found out who he was before he got the Penn State job. But do you think when we discuss this, there's something of a double standard? When Tom Brady does it, it's fiery, it's leadership, it's will to win. Antonio Brown and Todd Haley get into it, it's a different story. Odell Beckham gets into it, it's a totally different story. I feel like when we see coaches and players go nose-to-nose yelling at each other on the sideline, it's usually considered poor form by the player unless it's number 12 for the New England Patriots.
It's once every 2 years. So you referenced, remember 2 years ago when he did it with Bill O'Brien? This isn't something that happens weekly. It's not something that happens 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 times a season. Those other players that you referenced, there's a pattern of behavior oftentimes that we're talking about. And so when it gets to the point where it is a pattern, it becomes a problem because it becomes a distraction. This is once every couple years, if that. And look, it's not an issue.
One time we had a Monday night game against the New York Giants, and Randy Moss was given a penalty after he scored a touchdown, where he actually made the DB look so bad that he caught the ball, made the guy look silly. He backed into the end zone like the last 5 yards. So they threw a personal foul. That was his third touchdown in the first half. Now, when Moss came to the sideline and was sitting down, I was up in his face, yelling at him. But I was like, you're the best freaking football player in the world. This is what you're supposed to do, all right? I'm willing to eat that penalty if you continue to play like this. This is your expectation. All across the newsways, all across the news, Cris Carter and Randy Moss going at it. They had no clue what we were saying. And I was yelling at them, yeah, but telling them that's how good you are. And that's what I expect from you. Randy will tell you to this day. So a lot of things on the sideline are misinterpreted because Randy and I were both fiery players. So people just drew the natural conclusion to, oh, either Cris is not happy or him and Randy are having some problem. In all reality, most people, 99.9% of people, have no clue what the NFL locker room is like. They have no clue what the NFL sideline is like. So Tom Brady and Josh, no, there's not a double standard. Tom Brady doesn't get involved in stuff like this. But you know the thing that I thought was amazing? Bill Belichick, 5 feet away. You see how much he moved? Turned around like this? Now, Tom is yelling at Josh. Josh has his headset on. Coach Belichick has both headsets. He can hear everything. He didn't move one bit. Didn't turn around. That's how I know there's not a problem. This is not your normal office. This is our office, and this is how business is conducted, and sometimes you have to get a little loud and animated to be able to express yourself. But there's always been a great deal of respect for Tom Brady and whoever he's getting upset with. So, yes, your reputation has a lot to do with it, all right? A.J. Green, wheels around, hip, throws several punches to a guy. It's fine, not suspended. To lead. Right? No. So your reputation, yes, your reputation has a lot to do with your overall perception.
How much of Josh McDaniels' value to the Patriots, or maybe value is the wrong word, but I think you'll understand what I'm asking, is that he is not going to be cowed by Brady or intimidated in that spot, right? Like Brady is one of, if not the greatest football player, quarterback ever, right? And I would think there'd be a lot of coaches who, even if they wouldn't want to, Tom Brady's screaming at them. My bad, Tom. But in New England, I imagine that can't happen. You told the story about the Belichick saying that's why the C's on your chest, like that's why you're the coach. How much of McDaniel's value is that he can go nose to nose with Brady?
Well, one of the things that makes Tom great is he wants to be coached.
Yeah, I don't know why all the great players want to be pushed hard. Tom Brady every week is looking for Josh. How do I come up with an edge? Him and Josh meet so many hours together. So this is what great players want. They want another set of eyes to push them to places that they can't go to or that they can't see.
And sometimes they're going to, not sometimes, but he's going to be disappointed if Josh doesn't give him feedback, if Bill doesn't give him feedback, if they don't say to him, look, this is what you need to correct. But we've all been guilty of this, whether it's on the field, whether it's with our spouses or friends or whatever, our relationships where we say things a little bit too early. And even though you can give that feedback 30 or 40 or 60 seconds later and it'll have a totally different reaction, as coaches, we're just programmed to give that data the second they come off. And sometimes you got to take a step back and say, okay, diffuse, relax, and I'll give it to you in a minute.
And if I'm not mistaken, they scored 3 points on that play that he was upset about. But doesn't it say something about Tom Brady that even on a play where he walked off and he did get points, like he's so fired up, and it goes to your point, he wants to be coached. Like he wants to play better every single time out.
Yeah, Tom Brady, if we want to make him look good, we can look at it that way. But at the end of the day, Tom is trying to execute. Regardless if they scored or not, Tom is trying to be perfect. And he's going to accept coaching, all right? So if you like Tom Brady, you're like, I like that attitude. If you don't like him, you're like, oh, he's got a double standard.
And here's the other thing is that it won't happen again. He doesn't feel good about having that confrontation with Josh. It's not how business is done in that family. So we've seen it once. We'll see it maybe again in 2 years.
Back here on First Things First, Packers beat the Bucs 26-20 in overtime to improve to 6-6. Brett Hundley struggled, and that has been so sweet on my part. He threw for 84 yards and a pick. Good news for Green Bay, though. They've got the Browns next week, and then Aaron Rodgers is eligible to return against the Panthers. So, Nick, how scary are the Packers if they get into the playoffs with Aaron Rodgers?
Well, Aaron Rodgers is the best player in the league. So if they get into the playoffs with Aaron Rodgers, they're very scary. Cece, you've told me about the broken collarbone and injury you've suffered, that it's not, once he's out there, assuming he doesn't re-break it, it's not the type of injury that's going to make him a lesser player, right?
Well, this is the thing. I want you to imagine Carson Wentz and Russell Wilson last night recovering from a broken collarbone. How much concern would you have had them, just a normal quarterback, in an NFL game, under duress, the whole game?
Oh.
That's what's going to happen to Aaron Rodgers. Let's not forget about his offensive line. So you guys can calculate, okay, he's going to be back, but this is going to be very interesting.
Right, and the offensive line with that is a reason he could be re-injured, right? It could re-break. It's where that would be the concern, correct?
Yes, and also don't forget, if he comes back 2 weeks after he plays the Vikings, he has some harsh words for Barr, the linebacker. So they would be playing the Vikings again, and I know the Vikings are going to blitz him and go after him.
If he comes back, it would be the earliest he could come back is the week after this. So it's at Carolina, then the game Chris talking about Minnesota, and then
we'd love to have him come back.
And then at Detroit.
I don't know about the rest of the NFL, but we'd love to have Aaron Rodgers come back.
So, I mean, I think the Packers can beat anyone with Aaron Rodgers on the field. They showed that.
Aaron Rodgers at any state and phase, or Aaron Rodgers coming back from a broken collarbone?
I totally disagree with that. The reason why, because I don't think Jordy Nelson's is good. I don't think Cobb's is good. They got no running game, and their offensive line is not as good as when Aaron was in there. So just thinking Aaron Rodgers is the eraser going to erase the lack of talent that they have? No, they're not as talented as they were the last couple years. So I don't think Aaron Rodgers can even resurrect this team.
Did Cobb and Nelson, in your opinion, get worse than they were at the beginning of the season?
They're not making the kind of plays that I'm used to them making. Cobb is a system player.
Agreed.
All right? And if they don't get the protection and if they don't get the play designs, it's hard for him to get open and get separation.
Agreed. But by the time before Rodgers got hurt, they had already lost 3 tackles to injury. They were on their 4th and 5th tackle on the year. And I think in the game he got injured, they were down to their 5th and 6th tackle on the year. I think Rodgers and Nelson I don't think they've deteriorated much. Maybe they have from years past, but not from week 5 of this season to week 15 of this season.
Jordy, I have not been impressed with his overall running ability this year.
All year, agreed, all year. So the team, mostly as it is now, still was 4-1 when Aaron was out there. And so I think that that's why I'm saying I think they would be very dangerous. If this were a shoulder injury that's not a collarbone, if it was an injury that's going to affect his ability to get velocity on the ball, if it's an injury that's going to, like a lingering injury, a thumb injury where, yeah, he's going to be out there, but he's not going to be the same player, then I would feel differently. The thing is even though they won yesterday, 6-6, in an NFC where a 10-win team might get left out of the playoffs, there might be multiple 10-win teams vying for the wild card. Even if they win next week, there's still a long shot to make the playoffs. But if you're Carolina, you said Minnesota would like him. But those teams don't want to play the Packers with Aaron Rodgers, I wouldn't think.
So are you in the belief that you should play Aaron Rodgers if he is able to, if he says he's ready to go and the team thinks he's ready to go?
Yeah, absolutely. Because he can't do any further damage to it. If he breaks it again, it'll be either a clean break or they'll put a screw into it. No, it's something that the offseason will make go away. So, yes, he should be playing.
And then you explained this last week, and I thought it was very interesting. You saw no difference in his velocity, in the way he was throwing the ball. And I think some people misunderstand that the collarbone is related to the shoulder, and it would actually affect his throwing, saying he's not ready to go out there. But from what you saw in practice, you didn't have an issue with that.
Yeah, I hope everyone realizes the collarbone is on the shoulder.
No, I think a lot of people.
No.
You know what I mean? It wouldn't affect your like you could break your collarbone and come back and it not affect your velocity in the way you're throwing the ball.
Okay.
No. Let me translate what's happened.
Translate English to English for me.
Hold on. So Jenna's saying is I think most people would think 5 weeks after breaking your collarbone, you wouldn't be able to have the same velocity on your throws that you did pre-collarbone break. When you saw him warming up on that video, you were
wasn't judging the velocity on the ball. I was judging the velocity for which he could move his shoulder.
Correct. People, and Jenna's point, and I think she's right on, is most people would think coming back from a collarbone break, within 2 months, you wouldn't be able to get that same shoulder movement, shoulder velocity. You said
this is the thing.
These
athletes are in such great shape. They're in the prime of their life. Their recovery time is ridiculous. So normally, you go to a doctor, broken collarbone, the doctor's going to tell you, you're going to be inactive for 3 months. You're going to be in a sling for 6 weeks. NFL player, they get him moving. They immediately had surgery. He had a screw placed in there, which speeds up the healing. Calcium forms around the screw to make it even stronger than his other collarbone. But the round-the-clock treatment, electric stimulation, what they're getting, even from a nutrition standpoint, there's other vitamins and stuff you can take to help speed up. So I'm not surprised that Aaron is at this point, but I'm just going to tell you, getting in the game and playing in a physical game is a totally different story than throwing balls in warm-ups. I'm very impressed with his velocity that he can create with his shoulder at this point. Now, from practice on Friday, people who watched practice said if you didn't know that he had a broken collarbone, you would not understand him being out there on the field. Also in Friday's practice, he threw a Hail Mary, 65 yards, reported by a source of mine who's actually a real source this time. So 65 yards on Friday.
So now joined by Fox's lead college football analyst, Joel Klatt. Hey, Joel, nice to see you.
It's good to be here.
You.
First in-studio appearance?
Yes. I was out here, actually, it was before you guys were even on the air yet. So that was my last time in New York.
Oh, yeah.
We talk about you a lot, whether you're here or not, just so you know.
Sometimes my ears are burning, certainly, yes.
This is why, right there.
I think Joel is one of the absolute most valued members of the Fox Sports family.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Great at what he
And
does.
also, I think one of my partners is one of the lionest guys on TV. No, but I think you're good, though.
I'm just like, I'm still trying to process that. Like, I think Alvin Kamara is the best player in the league. I'm going to bet on Carolina.
Yes, we have 3 hours worth of that here, Joel. All right, let's get into some college football.
It's good.
Apparently, Joel, there's a difference between a drama major in college and major drama in college football. After weeks of drama, the playoffs are set. So it's #1 Clemson taking on #4 Alabama, while #2 Oklahoma will take on #3 Georgia. So Big Ten champ Ohio State is left out of the scenario. Joel, did the committee get it right choosing Alabama over Ohio State?
You know, I would even add someone else's. USC got left on the outside with a resume that actually is better than both Alabama and Ohio State when you really look at it, and it's more comparable to Ohio State. I will say this about those 3 teams that were vying for that last spot, and we realized it was really 2 teams that the committee was debating, Ohio State and Alabama. There was not a good choice. Okay, so like you're arguing between average resumes. So for those that you want to argue to expand the playoff, you're wrong. And we'll get to that in a little bit. But it's because we're arguing between average resumes at this point, okay? Both of these teams had major flaws. You had a 31-point loss to an average Iowa team for Ohio State. You had little to no good wins for Alabama, okay? So everything was weak about these 2 teams. You're debating this. That's why you've got to look at the committee rather than the teams, okay? So rather than debate the resumes, I want to just outline some of the inconsistencies that we've seen from this committee in 4 years. I want to go back to, if you're going to have a subjective crowning of a champion, which this is, then why are we keeping score in the first place? What sport that you keep score do you then subjectively crown a champion? Do we keep score in figure skating? No, because the judges keep the score for us. Do we keep score in gymnastics? No, because the judges keep the score for us. So why do we even have scoreboards? Let's just all play, turn the scoreboards off, and then send the film in to be evaluated, because that's what happened with this committee. They told us that nothing else matters what they've told us in the past. They are dishonest, inaccurate, and completely unreliable. This committee is. And you can break those all the way down. Kirby Hocutt lied to us the entire year. Last week, he told us Ohio State and Alabama, there was very little razor-thin margin between the 2, and now all of a sudden it's unequivocally that without playing a game, Alabama is better than Ohio State after Ohio State beat Wisconsin. It's crazy, the inconsistencies that we're seeing from this committee, which is why I'm of the belief that the long-term health of the playoff is at risk. Because right now, there's zero trustworthiness within the committee and the playoff structure completely.
So where do you go? What do you do? What's the solution? What's the answer?
Well, there are a lot of ways to go. The first and foremost is that we have got to create a system where you have to win your conference in order to go to the playoff. The fact that you can go to the playoff and compete for the national championship without winning your division or winning your conference is creating this mess. That fact is creating this mess, and that was totally born out of the greed of the SEC. Mike Slive was the most influential commissioner when this playoff was created. He's no longer the commissioner of the SEC,
but also when the playoff was created, the SEC by far was the most dominant team.
No doubt.
And had the best coaching staff.
No doubt.
That has changed.
That has changed. They're an average conference this year with a few really good teams at the top. My solution is very simple. All you have to do is say that you got to win your conference championship in order to go. Well, then all of a sudden, not only do the conference championship games become much more valuable, but now I just placed more value on the Iron Bowl. Because right now, the Iron Bowl, they told me it didn't matter. Auburn won what? Got penalized because they had to go play Georgia. And Alabama gets to skate through. So you're placing more importance on each game that is played. You're placing more importance on the conference champions, and you're retaining the quality of the regular season by still throwing out one of the conference champions. The worst conference champion, you throw them out, and then you go and you play the four teams in the playoff. That's the way to fix this. Unless they do this, we are going to continue to see the dishonesty and inaccuracies throughout this committee's ranking system from the week, whatever it is, 6 on each college football season.
Joel, the scenario, what you're talking about, where you have to win your conference to make the playoff, this year I think it makes perfect sense. But we've seen years where the 2 best teams in college football are in the same conference.
Okay.
The Michigan-Ohio State in 2006, I think they were both undefeated 1-2 when they played each other in the year. I know Auburn, Alabama have been 1-2 when they've played each other. So you're okay with where a team that, you know, a very close game, 1 versus 2, and therefore you lose it. When you might be the second best team in the conference, Alabama, LSU from a few years ago. You're okay with those teams being eliminated from a chance?
No question about it. You could make an argument that the 3 best teams or 3 of the 4 best teams in 2008 were all from the Big 12, Texas Tech, Texas, and Oklahoma. Absolutely. Why? Because we saw the games. So you were penalizing LSU by telling them you got to play that team again, rather than playing a team like Oklahoma State or Stanford in that year, which had earned the right to potentially play for a national championship. If you want to win a national championship in college, you've got to take every single game as the season. That's what's so special about our sport, right? That's why it's so important in September and October and November versus what we've got in the National Football League, which is, hey, let's go 8-8 in the AFC West this year and go to the playoffs. You know, I don't want that. I don't want to see teams that get to have a pass and then get a rematch later. I think it's bad for the sport.
Yeah, I like the idea as far as the conference champions, even though Ohio State did get in last year. They weren't the conference champ, but they had 1 close loss to a conference champion in Penn State. It helps clean it up. The Power 5 conferences, the emphasis has been on them.
Yeah.
All right, so it's not as if, let's not make up stuff. It's not like we're trying to get some at-large team or some other conference in the final. We're trying to get the best teams from the Power 5 conferences in. And what we should do is the conference champions, that should be an automatic qualifier. Now, unless we have some extreme circumstance where, say, Ohio State loses 3 games, USC loses 3 games, but they end up winning the championship. Oklahoma, they lose 3 games. But then you have another 1-loss Big Ten runner-up, or then you make the extreme case there. But I like the fact of winning your conference champions, especially the Big 12, the Pac-12, Big East, and Big Ten, ACC. If you win those, all those teams should be considered. Now, how you sort them out, because I don't want more than 4 teams in the final, because I've seen enough college football.
Yeah.
I know what a strain it is on the kids academically once you go back to winter quarter in January. Now, and if we are concerned about the kids, we can't just continue just have no end to the college football season.
Yeah, I mean, I think that there are a couple of fixes. Like I said, you know, the conference champ caveat being one of them. And then I would just throw this out there.
The SEC needs to play 9 games, too.
Yeah,
that would
well,
help.
You need to balance out schedules. That's certainly the case. The 2 conferences, by the way, that get a pass and have been in every playoff, and now the conference that has gotten 2 teams in a playoff for the first time. Those conferences play 8 conference games. Everyone else plays 9. Doesn't make any sense. I understand that, but that's the way it is in college football. A quick way to fix what you're talking about, which is removing teams that, let's say, would have 3 or 4 losses from having access via a conference championship. It's very easy. Get rid of divisions. The division format right now in college is terrible because we have such imbalances between, like, in the Big Ten, the East and the West. It's so imbalanced, right? So you have an imbalance in the North and South in the Pac-12, the East and West in the SEC, all these. If you get rid of divisions, play a round-robin style of schedule, put the top 2 seeds in each conference against each other in a conference championship game, and say you've got to win it to go, well, now you've got 10 of the top 12, 13 teams in the country essentially playing a quarterfinal. Then you throw the worst one out, you retain the importance of the regular season. It's a very simple fix, folks. Now we just need a college football commissioner. I'm available.
All right, let's get to the college playoff, the college football playoff. Alabama was selected over Ohio State for that last spot, with the Buckeyes being left out. People have started to call for the playoff to be expanded to 8 teams. Joel, would we be better off with an 8-team playoff after everything that happened with this selection?
I don't think so. In fact, I would say that this year is actually the exact argument of why you shouldn't expand, because we're starting to argue average resumes, that probably don't deserve access to a national championship anyways.
Right.
And the further you go, and that's just the 4-5 debate. So the further you go down, the more average the resumes get, and the less that we're going to retain our meaningful regular season, which I think sets college football apart from any other sport, is the meaningful regular season. It's the most important regular season in all of sport, and I want to retain that. I think it's special.
Okay, so let me make my case for the 8-team playoff.
I'd love it, because I know you've been an 8-team guy for a long time.
A specific version of the 8-team playoff.
Okay.
Which is your 5 conference winners, which is kind of
automatic berth.
5 automatic berth, 5 conference winners, 3 wild card spots determined by the committee's ranking with 1 asterisk, which is if you are an undefeated team, you get in. So UCF.
So group of 5, Power 5.
The only way the group of 5 is guaranteed in without being in the high enough in the ranking is if you're undefeated. So UCF, you know what? Go prove you can win these games.
They would love it.
They would love it. The first round is played at the home stadiums of the 1 through 4 seed. The seedings go by the college football playoff rankings. And then we have a 3-week, or I guess 3 weekends thing, similar to what college basketball has, which is you have weekends of your quarterfinals, then during the week your smaller bowls. The next weekend or Monday, however it works with New Year's, you have your semifinal, and then your larger bowls, your Cotton Bowl, whatever it is, and then you have your national championship. You would dominate the sports discussion for 3 weeks. There would be no controversy about did a team get snubbed. This year, can we show what it would have looked like this year under my system?
Got a bracket.
I've got a bracket that I can show you.
Bracket.
So 1 Clemson would host UCF.
Okay.
2 Oklahoma would host USC. 3 Georgia hosts Wisconsin. 4 Alabama hosts 5 Ohio State.
All right.
You would be incentivized for these big non-conference games.
Clemson just scored another touchdown. They're up 80-30 on UCF.
Well, good for them.
I mean, they just scored again. Extra point.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
Well, that's a reward for being the number 1 seed, Cece. And you would encourage major non-conference games, because it can't hurt you as far as getting into the playoff if you win your conference you're in, but it can help you if you don't win your conference to be one of those at-large teams. And lastly, you're going to say, oh, the games wouldn't matter as much. Guess what? Pac-12 championship game matters a hell of a lot more under my system. The games to determine who's going to win each division matters a hell of a lot more under my system. TCU is playing for a spot to be in the playoff under my system. So that's the idea.
All right, here we go, because you're my partner. Let me go against why this system is no good. All right, for one, UCF playing Clemson, they're going to get destroyed. Now, UCF had a huge game against South Florida, right? Huge game.
Yeah, huge.
Then they played the conference championship, right?
That's right.
And then they would play again, right?
That's right.
Before they even get in the Final Four. Now, Nick, how do the parents go to these games? How do the parents whose kids on it, how do they afford that? Okay, because Ohio State, let me tell you what their parents did the last several weeks. They went to Michigan.
Yeah.
They went back home, because most of the parents don't live in the college town. Then they went to Indianapolis. So now they would be paying to go to another game and then another game. So the resources that people that like to come up with these systems, they're not thinking about the kids. My mom wouldn't be able to go. You say, I'm in the college playoff. My mom wouldn't be able to afford either take time off work and or afford. Now, I know the universities, they do give them a travel stipend, but it doesn't carry it. So now you have the parents. They can't go to the game. You said they would dominate the month of January. When they're going to play the games? Wednesday night? Because the NFL.
No, Saturdays. Saturdays.
What about the NFL playoff games?
No,
we play on Saturdays too.
This all leads up to prior to the first week in the NFL playoffs, just like it does now. Right now, the semifinals are on New Year's Day. So you backtrack that 1 week.
New Year's Day is on which day, Nick?
Monday.
Hold on.
They have it on Monday for a reason.
Okay, well then,
because they don't want to go against the
Monday's
NFL.
Fine. If that's what we want to do.
I just want to say, like, it's really well thought out, right? Like, I get it, and it is what you would likely do. If you're going to say, what should we do if it was an 8-team playoff? Well, this is how I would structure an 8-team playoff, so on and so forth. I can give access to the national championship to the same number of teams and yet retain the importance of the regular season and retain the importance of the big championship games and the conference championship games. Because the problem with your system, as it's laid out, is you said, how much more meaningful would the Pac-12 championship be? How much more meaningful for TCU? So you brought up TCU. TCU was ranked 11th. Okay? I want it to be important for the team ranked first and second every week. Okay? So basically what I'm telling you is, what would prevent Oklahoma in the conference championship game? Hold on. From resting
guys.
Saying, like, well, you know, we're going to be at large anyways. Like, Baker doesn't need to play.
Because you don't know that. Because guess what? Guess whose name was not on there?
Why?
Auburn. Auburn was the #2 team in the country, lost their conference championship. They wouldn't have made it in this system.
But they had 3 losses, too.
But
they
you don't know. There's still access, right? So the level of importance versus a system where you say you have to win your conference championship. Okay, now those games, I just made them not just like, oh, they could matter more, to like, they matter, right? If you have to win your conference championship,
aren't home games important in
I'm
college
giving
football?
10 teams really access to the national championship. But if I throw one out via the committee and just say, okay, the top 4 go on, now I'm also giving importance to the Auburn-Alabama game. I'm giving importance to the Michigan-Ohio State game. I'm giving ultimate importance to every single game while still allowing access to the same number of teams that you're giving access. Because all you're doing is arguing for access.
Sure, but I'm also arguing the top 4 would get home games. So Oklahoma's not resting anybody if it's the difference between that game against USC being in Norman and them having to go to Alabama. Like, they're not resting guys.
So your importance on those games is for seeding, and mine is for just all the marbles, right? I mean, are we talking seeding here? It's like we're talking about practice. That's what it feels like.
When we discussed this earlier, CC, the point you made a point, not about the families, but about the players and about the number of games.
Yeah, I didn't even get a chance to get to that.
So, well, that's why I was trying.
I mean, I'm not trying to kill your case.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
But at some point, you have to think about the kids' academics. And when you go into the winter quarter, which you do in January, now you're taking another month where they have football as their #1 concern. And I'm just going to tell you academically, man, that fall quarter is rough. You take 15, 18 hours and you're playing Division I football, it is rough. And now you're going to make my second quarter, which I could take some time off, a fast start academically, because we know with the spring quarter, you're back playing spring football.
Yeah.
So at some point, we are talking about the student athlete, and we just can't keep adding games, adding teams just for the sake of it.
Yeah, I will tell you this, like, those arguing for 8, I will just tell you, the only 5 people that can actually make that happen are the 5 commissioners of the Power 5 conferences. I've talked to at least 3 of them for sure, and 4th I've had a conversation with. It is not happening. It is not even on the table. I'm talking about not even on the table.
Is anything going to happen? How realistic is it that anything's actually going to change? Yeah. I know, that's why I'm saying we're talking about all these potential different kinds of systems.
Okay, that's a great question. That's a great question.
I'm from Ohio State, and I don't want the system to change. I think it's not a perfect system, but it is a good enough, and it's better than what we've had in the past.
I think that the system will remain intact. What I think you're going to start to see a shift in is language, right? So the language that the committee uses to rank teams, I think, will start to shift. And the reason is because prior to this year, there was really only 2 conference commissioners that were really frustrated with the system, which was the Pac-12 Larry Scott and the Big 12 Bob Bowlesby. But now Jim Delaney is going to be frustrated because he's going to think to himself, you know, this was not right for us. We had 3 better wins than Alabama had. We played 4 different games that were better than any game.
Teams were in the top 5.
Yeah, exactly. And so what you're going to see is Jim Delaney and those other 2 now have the 3-to-2 ratio. Okay, so now they're going to be able to say, listen, you play 8 conference games in the ACC and the SEC, so we're going to change the language from 4 best to most deserving, or you've got to win your conference to go. So I think we're going to see a slight change in language, but the overall structure, that's not going to change until that media rights deal is up. And trust me when I tell you this, college football fans, those of you arguing for 8 teams, it's not even being discussed. I'm talking about not even
started the discussion
on
right
the
here.
table.
Thank you for listening to the First Things First podcast. Remember, leave us a review and tell us what you think. Subscribe to the podcast on Apple Podcasts and catch us on FS1 Monday through Friday, 6:30 a.m. Eastern. For Cris Carter and Nick Wright, I'm Jenna Wolfe. So long, everybody.